Fine assumption to make. Okay, I'm going to assume.
Yeah, it says live streaming.
Oh my word.
It's not on there yet though.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so thank you so much to everybody who has joined us this evening for our Sheffield GA inaugural Teach Meet event. This has been a real labour of love to put this together and to make this happen tonight. So thank you so much to everyone who's taken the time to join us. Really briefly, I'm Tom Hynett. I'm Geography Tom 9 on Twitter. Please tweet us, please use our hashtag, please push the event tonight. We've got so many amazing and wonderful speakers. So I'm going to cut my bit dead short now, and I'm going to hand over to Dr. Susan Pike, who's going to talk us through in more detail the work of the GA. So Susan, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Tom.
Sorry, can I just jump in? It's not on YouTube yet. It's not on there, Clary's just said. So no one can see us yet.
It was. I just had it open.
Oh, brilliant.
And it's saying live on YouTube at the top of it. So will I carry on?
Should we just go?
Let me.
Yeah, it is on. It is on. Yeah, everyone. I've just gone onto YouTube, and it's exactly what you can see. So I'll carry on.
Excellent.
Okay. Hi everyone. Thanks Tom, Beth and Clary and Elena for the invitation to launch the Sheffield GA branch. It's a great privilege to be here, even though I'm talking to you from Dublin with my headphones in because it's raining so hard outside. So like Tom said, my name is Susan, and I'm Vice President of the Geographical Association. You may well have seen me at the GA because normally I have all these lovely people in tow, some of my students from Dublin City University. So I'm a secondary geography teacher originally, and I've worked in teacher education over here for a long time now. So I just thought that I'd put this slide up to you first of all, because isn't there a lot going on with geography this week? So turn on the radio, they're talking about post-COVID-19 landscapes, the public realm, the statues and so on. Today, the early years and foundation studies, early learning goals included specific mentions of maps and lots more geography. We've got all the issues with Ofqual, so on this week, and plenty of other things, as well as everybody doing everything they normally do online, sharing their resources and so on. So some of that is to do with the GA, a lot of it is, and some of it is just to do with geography teachers getting on and doing their work. So I thought you might be interested to see what the early learning goals say now for in relation to geography, because specific mentions to maps, but lots of things that you secondary teachers would recognise as being geographical, looking at similarities and differences between places, making observations and so on. So just to give you a little sense of the GA and how it works, because I know when I was a new teacher and when I wasn't really involved with the GA, I was never quite sure how it works. So I thought this might be quite interesting for you. So first of all, there's the different branches. I've no idea why this keeps skipping on for me, but anyway, there's the different branches of which you are now one, and they organise different events and CPD events for teachers. I can see between the four of you here already involved that you've all got your own interests around ITE and secondary geography and so on. And we also have special interest groups, phase committees and different boards as well for the publications and the Worldwise quiz. So there may be other elements of the GA you're interested in getting involved in, and you can check out all of those on the website. And some of the people speaking tonight are involved in the special interest groups or the phase committees. So if you're a member of the GA, everybody gets the GA news with all kind of updates every term. There's also geography, which lots of you here have probably read. It's for teachers, lecturers and post-16 students. We have teaching geography, obviously for secondary teachers. And we also have primary geography, which is for early years and primary teachers. So all of the different resources are up on the website as well. And there's something new, definitely every month. It feels sometimes like it's every week as well. So check out some of the resources up there. Remember, there's a massive discount of 30% on all of those if you are a member. So the GA also provides continuing professional development, CPD courses, and you can see a few of those up there. Some of those have moved online at the moment. Your schools might also want to get involved in the quality mark at primary and secondary level. The amazing thing about the quality marks is they have such a positive impact across schools, not just in geography departments and so on. There's also things that the GA does that you don't really see. So over the last few weeks, the GA has been really heavily involved with Ofqual in relation to field work. It didn't work out quite how we wanted it to work out, but hopefully the creative geography community will come up with some great solutions for it for you. So there's just some points there about membership and how you get access to all of this if you are a member. So you can become a school member, an individual member, and so on. So just a last thing is about the conference. I'm afraid it's down south this year. It was going to be in Sheffield. It will be in Sheffield next year. And I hope lots of you will be able to come along this year and next year to the conference. So I suppose I'm coming in as president from the 1st of September, and these are just some of the things that I'm really interested in promoting when it comes to the GA. So as I said at the beginning, I was a secondary teacher and now I'm a primary teacher educator. So I'm always interested in how the different phases can speak to each other and what we can learn from each other. I'm really interested. It was great to hear that Tom said there's lots of NQTs have come along tonight, because I'm really interested in getting new people involved in the GA and being an inclusive organisation. So there's just some of the things, and hopefully you're going to see that at Conference 21. So it's all about compassionate geography. So that's the theme. I didn't know when I came up with this a couple of years ago how relevant it would be for things happening today. Some of those things I mentioned at the beginning, and it's looking like it's going to be a really well attended event, because people are just dying to get together. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it will be a face-to-face event in April. Seems a long way off now. And if you can't make that, it'll be around the same dates in 2022 when Alan Parkinson will be the president as well, and that will be in Sheffield. Okay, so I hope that was useful. Really looking forward to hearing the rest of the presentations. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm just susan.pike@dcu.ie. Thanks, everybody.
Susan, thank you so much for taking the time to do that introduction for us. I really, really appreciate that. As I've heard, there's so many fantastic benefits associated with the GA, which is why we were so keen to get this up and running and making the Sheffield branch a real success. I'm going to hand straight over to our first couple of speakers now. So we've got a couple of talks now on literacy, which is really kind of going off on Geography Teacher Twitter at the moment. It's amazing. So the first person I'm handing over to is David Goodwin. So David, whenever you are ready, it's over to you.
Hi everyone. Quite nervous for some reason, but let's get into this. So before I begin, just a little bit about myself. So as Tom said, my name's David Goodwin. You can find me on Twitter and You can find me blogging at my website there. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about etymology. Just before I begin, a little bit about myself. Been a geography teacher for 10 years, currently head of year for Key Stage 4, so year 10 and year 11. And previously before that, I was head of faculty. And as I said, I'm going to talk to you about etymology. So determined to try and keep this in, under 5 minutes. I'm going to invite you just to begin with to read through 3 slides. I'm not going to read them to you. I just want you to read through these. And this is the etymology of the name India. So as we can see, India and where its name comes from the old Persian word for the Indus River, and India is a land of 7 rivers. And finally, so why does all of this matter? Well, etymology is the study and the origin of words and the origin of names. And this is something that I would do with my pupils very early into, well, the very first part of a new unit of work. And already before we even begin to think about where India is located, my pupils are now aware that India has Asia's largest river in the Indus River, and they can connect that to their prior learning about rivers and the importance of rivers. And they also are aware that India has been occupied by many different empires, and previously before this, they would have learned a little bit about colonialism. So it really sets the scene, and it's about that storytelling that allows pupils to make meaning of some of the words. So that's the story of India, and I can't speak too long about stories tonight, but the power of telling stories is a way of making meaning about what we're studying. How I introduce certain words and phrases and break those down to showcase the etymology and to illustrate the meaning of words. Here is an example. So we have India as a subcontinent. We can break the word subcontinent down into its 2 component parts. We know that sub is Latin for under or close to, but obviously in geography we're thinking to the south of or southern. And we know that terra is the Latin word in which continent derives from, and continent means a large continuous landmass. And that helps pupils to understand that India is a subcontinent, meaning it is a large continuous landmass extending out from southern Asia. And again, we're thinking about the origins of the words and how that can help us make meaning. I'm going to move on slightly. I'm just going to introduce you to these 2 people, Diane and James Murphy, and I'm just going to talk to you very briefly about the importance of reading as well. So this is what Diane and James Murphy have to say about the importance of reading. So 800 words per lesson, okay, which roughly equates by the end of year 7, a pupil should be able to read 146 words per minute. So we're looking at somewhere in the region of 5 to 10 minutes reading in every lesson. And I'm just going to very quickly stop this screen share and just move on to another one. Where I'm going to just briefly demonstrate about how to make meaning of the reading and how we can actually get pupils to learn from that. So some of the different little strategies you can see here, numbered lines, and that's used for kind of like whole class reading. Again, we've got some etymology in here. And as we move through, we have some quite basic comprehension questions to make sense of the text. We build in almost like a little graphic, a knowledge organizer, and then we can delve into some more complex thinking. And then as we go through, and this is about the monsoon here, in this passage of reading here, pupils will be exposed to the fact that the monsoon is caused by differential heating. But we haven't really made sense of what that means at this stage, because what we're going to do is we're actually going to consolidate and make sense of that learning. And then at the very bottom here, you should be able to see a little bit about where I get pupils to think about the next passage of reading and what that's going to be about. So on the next page, you will see the title, Differential Heating in India's Unique Geography, Drives the Monsoon. Based on this title and what have you learnt so far, what do you think we're going to be reading about in this next page? So we're kind of preempting and predicting what's about to come next. And then after we've done the reading, we've got some consolidation and some summary tasks to summarize what we've learnt from the reading before we can actually start to get into application of our learning and our understanding. And then other little ideas in terms of whole class reading. Just this little idea here, and this is something I'm working on at the moment, but we've got a passage of text here. But before we begin, we're going to firm up that tier 2 language, those tier 2 words that aren't necessarily exclusive to our subject and we can see in everyday language, but are a little bit more complex than tier 1 language. And by doing so, that's going to make it a little bit easier to understand what we're about to read, and we can really focus and hone in on that subject-specific language. I'll stop there because I've gone on for 6 minutes, but if anyone's got any questions I'd like to discuss further at a later date, you know where to find me on Twitter. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks so much for that, David. I completely agree with everything David said. If you want someone to give you a really positive helping hand with geography, David's your man to go to. He's been absolutely incredible with all of his help and support. I've seen him through the community and also helping me myself. Right, I'm going to cut it there. I'm going to pass over now to Amy Cushing. So Amy, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. And just want to say a quick thank you to the GA, all of you, for organising this and having me speak tonight. So we just click share on here. So my name's Amy. I'm head of geography at Brinsworth Academy in Rotherham, and tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about the research that I did as part of my Masters in Education. And three things really I wanted to talk about. One is just to keep the profile of subject-specific vocabulary high in geography. It links quite well to David's talk. Second, to talk about action research and say to anybody watching, if you are doing a Masters yourself, or if you are just thinking you'd like to do some research in the classroom, find out students' opinions, then I encourage you to do that and share it. And as well, I realise that because this is research and students have signed their consent forms, I can share with you tonight some views of our students, my students. So, you know, we can hear from our northern geographers, our little northern geographers this evening. So I'm here to talk about subject-specific vocabulary and how we can develop it in geography. And there's an issue of the word gap in education at the moment. The idea being that higher achievement students begin school with a word count that could be up 50% higher than lower performing students. And there's also been a link suggested or shown between vocabulary size and a child's socio-economic background. The study that's on the screen at the moment by Hart and Risley is a really interesting investigation into this. And perhaps a text that some of you might have seen by Alex Quigley. He looks at this issue, he looks at vocabulary, and he refers to young people who have less vocabulary as being word poor, that they have less opportunity to develop their vocabulary compared to their well-off peers. So it's something where we can come in the classroom. So what's the situation in geography, our subject? The picture in the background is just 2 pages out of 8, I think it is, in the back of the GCSE book I use at the moment, all the words that we need our students to know, understand and use. So I want to stress, I'm not talking about the tier 1, tier 2, I'm talking about tier 3, subject specific vocabulary, words like carbon sink, words like sustainability that we want our students to have a really clear geographical understanding of. Just a little bit about who we are hearing from, who are my Northern Geographer voices. So the school that my research took place in is in a large housing estate in the outskirts of a major northern city, I have to remain anonymous. They have a below national average progress 8 score, below average pass rate at GCSE, maths and English, higher than average pupil premium. And when I see these statistics, I always think Northern powerhouse and how this kind of school fits in with that, so something else to keep in mind. So over to my students, and I'll tell you a little bit about what I found out from them and what they said. So it was brilliant that they agreed on the whole, up to 90%, that vocabulary, geographical vocabulary is useful to know and use in geography. They said it's important. How can you be good at geography if you don't know geography words? Which means they're in agreement with these grades that are on the bottom of the screen now. But they admitted it was hard. So some of the things they told me was hard about geographical vocabularies. There was lots of similar words. It's hard to spell the words. Some things are easy, but then when they have to start to describe and explain, they said that was a difficulty. So I've got a few of the quotes from students that I worked with in focus groups about what they said helps them learn geographical vocabulary. So this student said, for example, when you're talking to other people who really know a lot about geography, you can learn more from the words that they say. And another one agreed and said, yeah, if we're talking in class, it gives us a chance to correct words and say if you're using them in the wrong way. Students also said that if they're using vocabulary in speaking activities, then it can help with writing. So a student said, if we have spoken it in lesson, these are direct translations of their comments. Then they said we might be able to then think back to that when we're using it in our written answer. And another student even said that it gave them confidence if they'd used words in speaking activities in lesson when they were then in the exam or completing a piece of written work. I did ask students what else they found useful for learning vocabulary, and what's quite nice to see is that they suggested some things that we do. So they said it's useful if vocabulary is repeated in multiple lessons, if they see it on the board, if the more you do something, then the more chance they're going to have of remembering it. A few other suggestions that came from them as well. Definition activities, they voted for as being good. They liked those. This one surprised me. Standing up, one student said, when you're standing up, everyone's quiet, makes you nervous, and that can help you remember vocabulary. And perhaps my favourite one that a student said, that whiteboard thing, that's helpful for when we're learning vocabulary. So these are some of the things that they suggested as being helpful for them. So just to finish, I know that the GA put on their title today that we're hearing from Northern geographers, we're thinking about the Northern powerhouse, so I thought I've got a few just final thoughts to leave you with. And I am on Twitter now very recently, just the last couple of months, so if you've got any ideas you want to share on any of these or any ideas for actual research, then it'd be great to get in touch. And that's all from me.
Thank you so much, Amy, for sharing that. Absolutely fascinating. I love hearing about action research and teachers taking an active role in their classrooms. Absolutely brilliant. We were going to build some Q&A in, but I think we're going to just keep our presentations rolling now. So I'm going to invite Megan Richardson from Meadowhead School to lead with her presentation next. Megan, whenever you're ready, over to you.
Hi there, thanks very much. So I'll just share my screen. So a few years ago, I started or completed my master's research, and I got really interested in technology in the classroom. Now, there's a whole mass of academic theory that you can look at with visualizers, metacognition, and developing students' metacognition. But what I thought I would focus on is strategies that might be useful to people, and I think this is going to be really, really useful come September when we know, unfortunately, we're not going back to normal. So with a visualizer, if you haven't come across them before, I describe them as basically a digital overhead projector. A lot of people would get a bit annoyed with me using that description, but that's how I like to describe it. So with visualizers, it essentially projects the image of whatever it's looking at onto the board. You can use it for a multitude of different things, so recording sound, video, taking photos, annotating live within that lesson. And what's really useful about the recordings, and I've definitely found at home with my sixth formers, is the ability to record, save video, and then upload it to various different places, whether that is our online learning environment at school or just on the shared drive there. So with the strategies I wanted to share, I've picked out 3. There are massive different uses that you can have for them. We'll just start off. There we go. So I like to call this your Blue Peter moment. Essentially, you modelling the practice, whatever that is that you are doing. Now, I think this is going to be massively useful. I know from a meeting today, I'm going to be having to move between different classrooms. We're going to be teaching from the front with students in front of us. So I've lost that ability to be able to walk around my room and interact with students up close. So with this particular strategy, you could use this for drawing graphs, OS map skills. Map skills now, I essentially don't really use a PowerPoint all that much. I just have an OS map or something similar underneath. And I will model and teach my 4 and 6 figure grid references measuring distance live in front of students in the lesson. And you can take students from the start to the end through that entire process there. Now, the benefits of doing this, it shows your students the process live rather than you going through all of your instructions, even when you put it on the board step by step and they completely ignore it, it goes wrong, so they can do it along with you. Like I said, it's very useful for demos with particular skills, and also students can ask you. What I have found is that they're much more willing to ask you questions about what's going on, what you're actually doing, or hang on miss, why have you done that? And at the same time, you can do that with them, ask them questions, why do you think I'm doing this here? You do have to be careful with this though, with cognitive load. You have to define balance between the amount that you're talking, what they can see on the screen, and if they have something going on in front of them there. But it has been a really useful tool for me for modelling those different geographical skills that we have in the classroom. Up next, what I've got is I say to my students, a lot of my year 10, they say, right, who wants to go under the microscope? Now, I will say with this, if you're going to put students' work underneath the visualiser, you have to really foster over time this reflective atmosphere and attitude within your classroom, and also making it really clear to students it's fine to make mistakes. My emphasis when I am taking apart a student's piece of work, I know that sounds really harsh, but they quite like it because they like to be able to pick out the errors and see from my perspective how I mark things. So with this, often what I'll do is, like I say, ask who wants to go under the microscope. And now I've done this at Key Stage 3, GCSE and A level, where I have put exam questions under the board, under the visualiser, where I've put examples of really good pieces of work or written tasks that my Key Stage 3 students have done. And then we've gone through and marked it. Now, I found this really useful. I had a class of 32 students last year. And when you've got those marking pinch points, when you've got other assessment weeks and mocks going on, I would, during those weeks, emphasise self-assessment. So I would go through that student's piece of work that has volunteered. I would have a simplified mark scheme in front of them, ready to go, and I would mark that student's piece of work. We would then discuss as a class and reflect on why that person had picked marks up or hadn't. And then I would hand over to the students and say, right, okay, I've shown you how I would mark 1 or 2. Now I would like you guys to self-assess your own work. And that's really where metacognition comes in. So students' ability to build up the ability to reflect on their own piece of work and then know what they need to do in the future. And a lot of students have commented that this has been really useful for them when it comes to mock exams and the actual exams, thinking, right, okay, Miss has said this when we've looked at a 4-mark question or a 9-mark question. I need to make sure that I include that there. Up next, we have, if I can do it, you will do it. And this is the bulk of what my master's research was, so modelling exam technique. Now, I always tell my students to bug the question, so box the command word, underline your keywords, and then go back at the end. And a lot of the excuses I had from students not doing this was, I don't have time to do it in the exam, I don't know how to do it. Now, reading exam questions, I found when I was training, there was a lot of assumption that at A-level students could just read a question, interpret it and get on with it. Actually, reading A-level exam questions and GCSE is extremely difficult, and there's a lot of hidden meaning and content that students don't pick up on when they're reading those exam questions. And you can see an example in the top left here. This is a mock paper that I took a photo of where one of my students had done this. And it came from me repeatedly modelling to them how to take apart exam questions. There's a few different ways that you can do this. You can do it with individual questions that you're focusing on in that lesson based on the content. I have done it with an entire exam paper where students have also had the paper in front of them and they've gone through and bugged the question. You can do this talking to them, so explaining your thought process as you're bugging that question to them and as you're annotating the question as well. You can also do it as a silent worked example where you're saying to students, right, actually, I want you to think about why I'm doing something, and then have that discussion afterwards. So I've put on here, be aware printing costs, obviously that comes up quite a lot. And if you're doing this for the first time with a group, making sure that if you're modelling something in silence in front of them, give them some sort of structured question sheet where they've got to bullet point down some ideas of things you want to focus on, whether that's the keywords in the question, whether that's your planning process, or any strategies that you're using there. So that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Megan. That was absolutely great. And I kind of mentioned on the YouTube thread, actually, that it's something I really need to work on, is how I'm using my visualizer. So that's fantastic. We've had a few people asking if you're on Twitter as you are, so please share that. And if you're not on Twitter, please be on Twitter, because we'd love to talk to you about your amazing work. Right, up next is Ellie Clark, who is here to talk to us about using GIS. So Ellie tweeted a poll the other day to kind of find out about people's perceptions of GIS. I answered saying I'm essentially a Luddite and incompetent. I can't wait to hear this. Ellie, over to you.
Hi guys, I'm pretty sure you can't actually see my face. I'm really sorry, I'm working off an iPad which can't do apparently two things at once. So yeah, I'm going to be talking to you guys about GIS. So we as a school, a couple of years ago, we weren't great, and I luckily was allowed to go on a number of free courses that Esri ran, and kind of developed my GIS ability, and have tried desperately to share that with the department, who is listening right now, so hi Roz. And so yeah, we try and use GIS at every single point across the key stages. So I'm going to kind of briefly go through the sorts of things that we do. So in year 7 we do a range of different things. We use it in field work, we introduce it when we're teaching crime, but my absolute favourite thing to do is when we teach tectonics. You take a huge massive Excel spreadsheet from the USGS, you drag it, you drop it onto a completely blank map, and boom, there is all of the earthquakes from the last 4 weeks. You can then play around with it a little bit and make it, you can have depth and magnitude and that sort of thing, and then overlay the plate boundaries, and there you've got a talking point pretty much sometimes for the rest of the lesson. In year 8, we have moved on a little bit with our field work, and we've started to use Survey 123, which is an Esri app that you can get. You can download it onto your phone. I'm sure a lot of you already do this, so I'm hoping that I am preaching to the converted, but if not, ask me questions afterwards. We, as you can see on the picture, we do a microclimate study around the site, and what we do is we set up a set of questions that we used to have on a piece of paper, and we now do it on their phones, and they take it round, they record their data, and then in live time I can then start manipulating that data and showing it to them when they get back into the classroom, which again, pretty much a wow moment, but also a really effective way of displaying data really, really quickly. Esri in recent years have also come up with all of these little kind of gimmicky, adorable little symbols that you can use. So this was for sound, so I found a little sound symbol. By the time we get to year 9, they're relatively okay with kind of the fieldwork stuff, but we start to play around with big data sets. So whilst we do obviously still use it with fieldwork data, as you can see at the bottom, we can make Xyline maps, which saves huge amounts of time and a lot of colouring in spiders. We play around with big data sets that you can get access to using the Living Atlas, which is an entire website of Esri, which pretty much any data you want, you can find it on there. The top one is, I honestly can't remember, I've had a complete mind blank. It's something to do with poverty, which is awful. I really should know that. But the middle one is HDI. So you can play around with it, you can show students. We're developing use of iPads in school, and this is the sort of thing that works really, really well when everybody can play around with it on their own and have a look and delve deeper. So by the time they hit GCSE, hopefully they're pretty good with their ArcGIS use. We use Survey 123 again when we go to Hull to do our inequality in the urban area data collection. But we also, before we've done that, we get to use the 3D maps, which are so much fun. So this hedgehog version of the world that you can see at the bottom, all of these are the cities of the world. So you can show them the mega cities. And obviously I can't do this right now, but on a computer screen or even on my iPad, if I wasn't using a PowerPoint, you can scroll around, you can zoom around the world, and you can kind of get a really good idea of where the major cities are in the world. So by year 11, we then use story maps. So story maps they're really basically funky, cool, mappy PowerPoints. And I'm really sorry to the person who invented a story map, because that was probably not what they were aiming for. But these story maps are available from Esri. I'm going to show you a couple of links right at the end, and I'm happy to tweet the links out as well, where you can just access these, and they often have worksheets and questions to go with them, and it helps kids to really understand the different case studies that we're looking at. We're also developing the use of Jog IT app with our fieldwork, because it's absolutely brilliant, and you can collect your fieldwork on your phone, and then you can transfer it into any kind of map-based app on the computer. So in the sixth form is kind of where we really take off with our ArcGIS use. It's where I started with it, because it felt the right sort of thing to do, and that's why we're sort of working our way down through the rest of the key stages. We've used it in field work, in the carbon and water cycles, you can use it pretty much anywhere, if I'm honest. And I developed my own little kind of like booklet of things that they could use it for, which hopefully has worked really well. And we actually had one student recently decide he wanted to do geography at university simply because he loved how much he could use ArcGIS. So hopefully that's a great selling point for us. So the future, I want to develop my own use of story map. I want to use more GIS. If other people have got better ideas or great ideas of how you can use it, that would be amazing. Please share them with me. So these links, I will tweet this image out in a minute, and then you can all use them as much as you want. And I am done.
Ellie, that was an absolute tour de force of how we can effectively use GIS in the classroom. I loved every part of it. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us this evening. I mean, I already have 1,000 questions to ask you because of the trust that I work for. We're doing some work on GIS, so I'm super up for a conversation with you about that at some point. That was amazing. Thank you. Right, so handed over next to Ben Eckersley. So Ben is a colleague who I've worked with before through my trust. I'm really excited for what Ben is going to present for us tonight. So Ben, whenever you are ready, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tom. So as Ben said, I am as Tom said, I am Ben. I'm a geography teacher and associate assistant principal at Outwood Academy, Sheffield. I studied environmental science at Sheffield Hallam, and I've noticed my dissertation supervisor, Dr. Naomi Holmes, is watching as well, so there's no pressure there. I also did my PGCE in geography at Hallam, and again, my PGCE supervisor, Vicky Margrave, is also watching, so again, no more pressure. I'm now studying a education and technology course, a master's at Manchester, and I've just been appointed a leader of EdTech in my trust. So what my presentation is looking at today is moving on from kind of what Ellie was saying about GIS. I'm looking at specific Google Tour Builder. So it's something I haven't really used before in classrooms until I started doing my Google Educator courses. And I just think at the minute it's really, really prevalent, because with the government guidance in geography regarding fieldwork might be changing slightly for next year. It provides an opportunity for pupils to see a number of different places that they might not have the chance to next year. Or if we do get to do field work next year in GCSE and at A level, it kind of can set the scene, so we can do a lot more concise field work. So this program is free for everyone. It's Google Tour Builder. If you just put that in Google, it will come up straight away. You do need to sign into it with a Google account, but there is no kind of, at the minute, it is in beta testing mode. There are professional accounts, but unfortunately, the general public can't get hold of those yet. So the basics are, you can have a look at shared tours, and a shared tour, what it does is uses Google Maps and Google Earth and kind of gives you a tour around the world, and they're built by professionals. They're appropriate. They can be appropriate for any subject, not necessarily just geography. But what I'm going to show you is something I put together, which is more geography specific. So again, this is just something I put together, a short tour about along the River Thames, and we're just going to look at features. And what you can do is you can put in steps, and it creates a storyboard for pupils to see in lesson. What I think is also good, which is what I'm definitely going to do next year, is pupils can actually build their own. So you can kind of give them a brief of what you want, such as a feature along a river, and they can go away then and find it themselves. You don't necessarily have to give them the River Thames. They can use their GCSE case study river, any river in the world. So what I've put together here is just a really short example of what is possible with this program. So obviously I want to look at features across the Thames. So we're going to start kind of in the upper course. And what I can do is I can get the program to zoom in. And when I share this and save it, it will automatically zoom in when pupils go to it. And we can kind of see here, obviously it moves us straight down to Street View. And the idea here is pupils are going to have a look at the river width. So it's really easy to see down on ground level, the width of the river here in Staines. And obviously as we go along, pupils are then going to compare and contrast this. And it's really easy to put in descriptions. And again, once you are kind of using this a lot more, there's a lot more focus you can put on in the descriptions and more information for them. But it's really, really simple. So just adding different locations. And again, the more you add, it will zoom out and take that journey for you, for the pupils. And I've also put something in here, you can build in lots of different features as well. So for example, here, we can see the River Thames kind of in central London now, outside the Globe Theatre. So again, it's drawn in other subjects. And again, we can promote conversations there. But again, pupils can look around and now compare, actually, it's the same river. We haven't actually been to London. We haven't had to book a coach down to Staines and then move across down to the central London. But we can quite easily see now the width of the river is increasing. And again, I'm not going to go through every single one, but as you're moving along, it will create that story for you, and you can put in as much or as little information as you want for pupils to see. And again, it's a great tool for pupils to kind of look at and learn for themselves. And obviously my degree in the EdTech lead, I want to be putting as much kind of this technology, this real life research, these real life photographs kind of into the curriculum, so pupils can see for themselves what is out there. And obviously we have limited time, and there's budget constraints and time constraints in GCSE and at sixth form for field work. Obviously this year is going to be very different. So this is just something that pupils can put together, or a teacher can put together. This one took me no more than 5 minutes to put together, and it gives a really good indication of just a simple journey here along the River Thames, comparing what it is from source to mouth. So yeah, if this program is, as I said, free to everyone, so it'd be great for people to go away and just feedback to me on Twitter at GeographyBen, just about what you think about it. It is in beta testing mode, and at the Trust I am in touch with our kind of Google trainer, who has a direct link to people at Google for Education who are putting different things in. So the zoom feature down to Street View is something that's just recently been added. So if anyone thinks of anything that could be added, please get in touch and I can pass that on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ben. I've never come across Google Tour Builder before, but that is something immediately after this is over, I'm going to go and have a play with. That looks great fun. Thank you so much for taking us through it.
Brilliant,
thanks a lot. So I'm going to hand over now to James Hamley. So Jamie, whenever you're ready, it is over to you.
Hi. So I wanted to talk today about Key Stage 3. Just say, first of all, I'm a secondary geography teacher in East Leeds. Good afternoon. And yeah, I'd like to talk to you about curriculum sequencing at Key Stage 3. So there's obviously a big focus on the new curriculum from Ofsted. And it's really important we know why and how why we're teaching what we're teaching at that moment in time. I want to talk to you a bit about assessment as well. I'm coming from a place where I've done a lot of research on this, some dialogue and discussion with other professionals, but this isn't a place where I'm coming from having Ofsted feedback to me about this. So little disclaimer there. So on this spreadsheet here, you can see what I've done is I've started off with the national curriculum and I've got the main topics. And then from these topics, I've tried to group them. So first of all, I've grouped them into physical and human. And the top one here in group A, this is my physical group, where it's similar processes and interactions between the physical and the human environment. Now, when I was thinking about ordering these, the first thing I wanted to know was what have they already done at primary school? We know that we should always be building on their prior knowledge. So the best place to start was, I felt, hydrology, because this is elements of this are studied in Key Stage 2 as rivers. So it's consolidating the previous learning and extending it. Going from there onto coasts, that's not been studied at Key Stage 2, but it does involve similar processes to hydrology. Again, so we're extending, building on the previous knowledge and taking it further. And then lastly, I thought glaciers, because although there are some similar processes and it belongs in this group, it's increasingly abstract. And I think in group A, it's more the pinnacle and it's the highest challenge in that area. Moving on to group B, physical group B, again, I thought there were similar processes here. So I've grouped these into these three topics of weather and climate, plate tectonics, rocks, weathering and soil. And then again, starting off with thinking about Key Stage 2, how do we extend their previous knowledge? So weather and climate, including the ice age, the present, I feel like this really built on the climate concepts and climate zones that they do in Key Stage 2. So this should belong first in the curriculum, perhaps in year 7. And then building on that, we could be looking at earthquakes and volcanoes. I think that's more abstract than weather and climate. And then lastly, the function of rocks, weathering and soils. This topic, I felt like this would be last. And the reason for that is because rocks, weathering and soils, they're a function of plate tectonics, climate. And so that understanding is needed before beginning on rocks, weathering and soil. So I guess the main principles I'm talking about are thinking about what's being taught at Key Stage 2, what their prior learning is, how we can build on this, and what is the most abstract and needs to be taught last in terms of challenge. So I've thought about a similar concept for the human topics as well, and for mapping and for field work. So in terms of human, population and urbanization first, or using natural resources, again, they're both seen in Key Stage 2. And then looking at next, economic activity in primary, secondary and tertiary, I really felt like that was required for the next topic, and it also builds on the previous two. And then lastly, international development. I thought that was really more complicated. It involves change, understanding challenging concepts like indicators of the economic and social indicators and quality of life, requiring understanding urbanization and different stages of economic activity. And a similar process for mapping and for field work. Given that, I'm happy to share this, by the way, given that it's, I've only got a couple of minutes left, I wanted to talk very briefly about assessment. And this is going to be massive, obviously, with all the lost learning and trying to catch up on that. So my main ideas around assessment I want my department to be doing is going to be a combination. So there's some great work by Tom Sherrington about Mode A and Mode B homework. So I wanted to think about Mode A as being testing on the core ideas, perhaps multiple choice tests. So this would be an end of topic test or a literacy test. So at the end of a topic on glaciers, they might have multiple choice test on the key different concepts and knowledge, and then a literary test as well. So that would be on the key terms. That's probably going to be at the, well, that would be at the start of the topics. You want to explicitly teach those keywords first. I'd also, in the end of the topic test, have some longer questions so we can build them up and prepare them for GCSE. Now, one key thing to think about is obviously the forgetting curve. what I would like to now do in Key Stage 3 is have core knowledge from all previous topics regularly assessed in a multiple choice format. So when they're on their 5th, 6th topic in year 8 or year 9, they're still being tested on what they learn at the start of year 7. And you're going to have to think really carefully about what is the core knowledge you want them to keep. Right, I've got some examples here of the different literacy tests and topic tests and knowledge tests. I'm happy to share these. In terms of, if I just go back briefly to the Mode B homework, that is more open-ended. I think I've got that at the bottom here, that this is going to be more open-ended project type work. So looking at whatever you're missing from the curriculum, these could really fit in well to your Mode B projects. And that is about it. I would love to know your thoughts on my ideas around sequencing and around assessment, especially trying to build assessment over time to prevent forgetting. And that's it, that's me done. I think I've gone slightly over time, apologies.
Jamie, that was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your expertise. I tweeted to say it felt a little bit like we were seeing into the mind of a geography teacher there, so that was great. I'm sure people will catch you on Twitter. Ryan is ready, he's booted me off. Ryan, it is straight over to you whenever you're ready.
Yeah, sorry everyone. So, yeah, I'm Ryan Nock. Yeah, the big question that we're asking here, sorry, I was just having a problem with Zoom there. The big question that we're asking here is glaciation. Is it the Marmite of geography? And that's the big question that we're all asking. So I teach in Leeds. And so is it the Marmite of geography? I know we're going to offend a few people here when I say this, but Marmite, I don't like it, but glaciation, I absolutely love it. So we're going to have a look in and delve into this. You know, why is glaciation so unpopular when it comes to options at GCSE level? So what's the evidence that we have? And the evidence that we have here is from the GCSE examinations in the summer of 2019 and the A-level examination of 2019. As you can see, that 79% of the schools pick coasts and rivers. And if you look at glaciation, it's very low on the percentage-wise there. And that's same for A-level topics as well. Coastal landscapes and systems was 81% and glaciation just 12%. And I did a bit of a Twitter poll yesterday, and 85% out of 396 votes, you know, said that they take coasts and rivers and choose those as topics. So it's why is it so unpopular as a topic at GCSE level and at A level? And these are a few of the reasons why people weren't choosing it. So I've asked a few teachers that I know of and teachers on Twitter, you know, why have they not chosen glaciation at GCSE level? And a lot of them said that they're not a specialist in the area and they don't feel confident teaching it, and they don't take the pupils to these sort of environments, or they're not used to seeing coastal landscapes or river environments. And the scale's big, it's really abstract, and coasts and rivers have the similar erosional processes, so that makes it very easy for teaching, you know, through GCSE level. But you know, I'm a teacher in a city school in Leeds, and my degree was human geography, so I wasn't a specialist, but I've worked very hard to become, and I'd say I'm more now a specialist in physical geography than human geography. And when I teach glaciation to pupils in a city school, they absolutely love glaciation, and it's one of the topics that they want to learn about the most and most interested in when we're teaching it there. Now, what I'm saying is here, what the reasons we could give it a chance is it is abstract, you know, it's interesting to learn about. It's something that the pupils will never see in their life. Some of them, you know, in an area that they may never have been taken to, and it inspires, and it's awe and wonder in there. And this is the geography that we're looking at, and as Markin says, the powerful geography that we want to look at. And it also links into metacognition, and it lets pupils, you know, think like a geographer, have that deep understanding about, you know, what's this environment and how has it been created in that sort of sense of the words. And I know it might be controversial to say this, but when it's stripped back, glaciation is very simple to understand. There's only two erosional processes, plucking and abrasion. And if you understand how a core is formed, then you'll understand how an arête and a pyramidal peak is formed. And the same for a valley glacier. If you understand the processes behind that, then you'll know how a glacial trough, hanging valley, and ribbon lakes formed. And this is sort of easy in the steps to link, and, you know, easier in that sense of the word. Whereas I think as much as I love rivers as well and coastal environments, I think there's more spread in those topics that can be asked at these levels. And glaciation is also an A-level unit as well. So just a bit of support here if you're thinking about taking glaciation further, and here's a few ideas or where you can get some information about them and, you know, promote glaciation. The VR Glaciers virtual reality is a fantastic resource where you can take your pupils into an environment and show them the scale of glaciation. You know, what a great resource. And we have our own, Richard Waller, a legend in glaciation, has created some documents for the GA and is also in the Time for Geography videos as well. You know, these are great resources to help with glaciation as well. And also then you've got glaciation and geological timescales here from the RGS. That's the Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 5 content, you know, that you can have a look at and that supports you with teaching that. So why not show glaciation some love? You know, I love going into glaciated environments, taking pictures so I can show my pupils the scale of things in glaciation and promote it in that way. So, you know, I think we should all be pushing glaciation forward. Let's see it increase at GCSE and A level, you know, the percentages, let's get the risen up. So, you know, let's show some love. And thank you for my presentation. And I'm obviously part of the physical geography in special interest group as well, and the Falsig fieldwork group, I chair that. So, you know, give us a follow as well if you want to know more about glaciers or ask more, and obviously the GA Sheffield branch.
Ryan, that was absolutely great. Thank you so much. You might not like Marmite, which feels like quite a significant crime, but you know what, your chat about glaciers was fantastic. Now we're going to introduce our very own Southern Northerner, David Rogers. So David, over to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good to be here. I am a Welshman. I'm going to start off there. And in my training, I trained at the University of Durham, which was Hartlepool and Newton Aycliffe. And Yorkshire I've been to do some mountain marathons. And I thought today I'd kind of just have a little bit of a rant, but a structured rant, I'm hoping. And I'll make this available so you can see it and see the resources. At the moment, I am in charge of behaviour in a large academy. We've got about 1,500 students. And most of my time at the moment is dealing with the here and now of this situation that we find ourselves in. And I think what's important for me to say is that, you know, we will embrace again. We don't know when or what will happen. And this really might be a message that takes a little while. It was certainly a message that I was frustrated as a young geographer. And it wasn't really until I got into middle leadership that I could start doing some of these things. And I'm going to use fieldwork, which has been mentioned a few times today, as a bit of a lens on that as well. But it's going to be a little bit of an argument of a thread. Now, there's three things really that I really are going to touch upon. The first, habit formation, is kind of fairly new, and I'm sort of weaving my ideas in around this, but of course it's been there for a while. The learning needs forgetting, which has already been mentioned today, and the idea that testing is good. Now, at the moment, as geographers and in the situation, if we're not careful, And if we look at compliance, what happens is that we become footballs, we become, well, rugby balls in my account. We have to change what we do all of the time. And we don't have control over the learning and over our subject. And what we do is expend a massive amount of energy doing what I would think of operational things, like making sure we meet the exam and the criteria, rather than focusing on that high quality geography. And my argument is we need to focus on that high quality geography, and the rest sometimes and always, I would argue, will take care of itself. And essentially what this leads to is something that I've kind of really believe in. And if we take fieldwork, you know, that's inquiry, fieldwork, data analysis is a golden thread that weaves throughout our curriculum. Fieldwork is a massive part of geography. And so if it's reduced to a fieldwork paper, then we're in trouble. We can do that through extensive use of school grounds, and we can always put that fieldwork within a geographical context, and hopefully a local geographical context. And thinking in terms of around behaviour, well, what kind of justifies that? You know, a habit is a behavioural tendency tied to a specific context, and quite often we can think in terms of effective learning behaviour here, but in fact any behaviour and effective learning behaviours need that practice. So the cue of the environment, of going out into the fields, triggers a behaviour and a certain way of thinking, which will then be rewarded by us. And that needs to happen over many, many repetitions. And if we only do fieldwork now and again, for example, just as well, if we only just do, say, development now and again, then to me, that's a bit of a barrier for high quality geography. And I've got the links for you that you can have a look into this. And in particular, you know, there's, if we think about high quality geography, what are we talking about? Well, the known and nurtured, which is what we have in my school, which is about knowing our young people, the habits and making things automatic. So if we go back to that example of fieldwork, if it's only done now and again, there's not that habit there. That in turn links into the cognitive science, because if a student is thinking so hard and trying to remember what they did and what they're supposed to do, then they have less capacity to actually think of the actual geography and apply their knowledge to that question. And then, of course, we've got the curriculum, and the curriculum is, you know, the official curriculum, which is written down and in specifications. And then, of course, is the curriculum that is contextualized in geography to our local areas and what we should be teaching anyway. And the high quality geography bit is when all of that comes together. And we can think of those, I think, as four things. So knowing our learners and their behaviour, knowing why we teach and what we teach, the context behind what we teach, and geography should be contextualised. So certainly up in Sheffield, you know, you need to have your geography contextualised. It's really weird in Littlehampton that when I arrived, we didn't teach the River Arun, which runs past the school, and we were using the Tees, which is in the textbook. And also we need to know how to teach for learning. So we need all of these things to come together. Because being a geographer is simple and complex, and a big part of it is skills acquisition. And there's been some great talks today about GIS, about how to sort of use graphicity and so on, and inquiry. And those things don't come naturally. And if we don't do them from lesson 1 of year 7, then we miss out. And we also become prone to having to react to events rather than just thinking, stopping and evaluating what we do. And I think a good example of this, you know, is maybe the helix curriculum or the spiral curriculum. And this is really the same kind of concept. It's where we're going to come back and back. And if you haven't seen Educaty and her work around this, I really urge that you go along there and have a look. And I'm using the helix here just as I would thread myself that fieldwork right the way from that week 1 of year 7. Yes, we've got to be very creative, but is it important? Yes, absolutely. Fieldwork might go from GCSE. Is it still important that we teach it for high quality geography? I would argue yes, because that fieldwork also really revisits those core concepts in geography that we can learn. Some young people have been away from school for a very long time. Fieldwork to me is going to be even more essential. And staying with that example, you know, I'm quite fortunate in that I teach year 12. I'm going to see them again tomorrow for, I think, the third or fourth time face to face. And we kind of started that NEA thinking in lesson 1 of year 12. But of course, they've already had 5 years of that fieldwork, 5 years of becoming expert inquiries, mastering their fieldwork, getting to grips with massive data. So already they've thought, right, what secondary data sets can we get in here? How can we get primary data when we're ready? And we're all set up, ready to go. And of course, we're not going to do anything unsafe, and I wouldn't advocate that, but we can look from an area of strength and go, and look, we've got a really strong curriculum here that develops that fieldwork. And so that means we can think and pause and not be, oh, of course, done this, this is what we've got to do. And by the way, they haven't done anything yet. And I suppose it's that dramatic attention filter. And this is another thing, you know, I see a lot of factfulness and I see a lot of factfulness units. And just like fieldwork, factfulness actually needs to be threaded all the way through. And I use this diagram because it's very much like the diagrams you would see about attention and working memory, and how to get that into long-term memory. And of course, what we attend to, we learn, and what the young people attend to, they learn. At the moment, we're reacting to this announcement by Ofqual, and are we really thinking and evaluating, and how are we sort of sticking to our curriculum? And not to go through these, but those factfulness rules of thumbs, I think, should thread all the way through an entire geography curriculum. In a secondary school, that would be maybe 7 years, but even down into primary, and that from primary is really important. And essentially this one, this slide was simply going to be the Ofqual announcement. And what I would say is it's very, very tempting to kind of get really panicked and go, right, there's this Ofqual thing. And a lot of people will say to me, yes, but you know, our SLT will want to. Well, the key person in our geography departments is that head of geography and those geographers, and it's our role to make those arguments. And if we make the argument from the strength of the curriculum, then we will win out. And I know it's very, very frightening times, and we've got to be pragmatic, and of course there will be some tactics to do that, but I would urge you really to stick to your curriculum, put lots of thought into your curriculum, and do that as well as you can. Do get in touch at David E. Rogers. I'm really pleased that the Ofqual broke my presentation, and I hope to hear from you all soon.
That was absolutely superb, David. Thank you so much. It's some really valuable takeaways for our geography teacher community there. Definitely get in touch with David on Twitter. He's absolutely fantastic at sharing all of his thoughts and expertise. Right, over to our final speaker of the evening. So Alan Parkinson, is over to you.
Okay, that was smooth. Good evening. I'm Alan Parkinson. I'm talking about PC geographies and navigating new normals. By PC, I mean post-corona geographies. I'm going to talk about how geography may change when we return to school, whenever that may be, in whatever form, from September onwards. Some of you are already in school, perhaps, dealing with the new normals, the new navigation, even if that's the one-way system around your school that now exists. But we're also going to have to navigate through perhaps new curriculum materials, new ways of working. Maybe we're not going to be in our classroom anymore. We're going to be peripatetic ourselves. Before I do that, I just want to share my qualifications, I guess, as a Northern geographer. I work in Norfolk currently, and I've been there for a long time, but this is a view I used to have when I walked to my secondary school. This is the footbridge over Bawtry Road in Wickersley. And in the distance, on a clear day, you could see Sheffield. I also referenced this book written by Carl Lee, who works in Sheffield, and it's a personal geography of Sheffield, and I've used that myself. as a model for sort of writing about place. Also, thinking about my father was a steel worker, steel peach and tozer, classic Sheffield steelworks, Meadowhall steelworks. Top right, there's the hole in the road, a classic feature of Sheffield's urban geography, sadly filled in, but you know, a real sign of the 70s really. And there's a 69 bus that I used to take from Rotherham to Sheffield, which cost the princely sum of 2p for a single trip, back when I used to take the bus in the 60s and 70s.
Alan.
And the graffiti there is familiar to many from Sheffield. It's on the Park Hill flats, which overlook the city. And for 3 years, I was fortunate enough to work in Sheffield at Solly Street for the Geographical Association. So to go back to my presentation, this I posted on my Living Geography blog on the 13th of March. It's a quote from War of the Worlds, and it's the eve of the war. The cylinder has landed, the first cylinder has landed on Horsell Common, and people are carrying on their lives as usual, but already the Martians are here. The signs of the future are taking shape. And this was how I felt on the 13th of March. I could see that the news was coming out of China was going to change things, and I was teaching topics that I'd taught for quite a few years, topics that I really liked. But I started to feel that they were becoming less significant, that actually what was happening was going to overtake and possibly change what we were going to teach
Alan,
in the future. And so
just to jump in, I don't think we can see your screen at this moment. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay. You can't see anything at all?
Not at the moment, no. It's been great to hear from you. Obviously, it's been fascinating. I've been painting mental pictures.
Well, I shall carry on without pictures, if that's okay.
That's absolutely fine.
And just say that the presentation that I'm using is on the Living Geography blog. So if you're speedy, you can head over there and stream it from there when I'm speaking. Okay, so what I've posted on the screen is a quote from War of the Worlds, and the eve of the war was the beginning of a change for everyone. And so what I started to do was think about, well, what's going to happen to the geographies that we're going to teach when we return to school? And I joined a Facebook group. Now, the Facebook group was started by Matt Podbury. It's called Teaching Geography During COVID-19. If you search through Facebook, you'll find the link, or get my presentation from Living Geography and the link is on there. There's 1,300 geographers there talking about the practicalities of how we might teach about, or during, or post COVID-19. And our personal geographies have changed. If we think about it, the traveling that we would have done, our retail, the culture that we would have accessed, we've missed concerts, we've missed plays, the negotiations over space, the dining room table, who's going to have that? The bandwidth, the data that we're all using during our lockdown learning and teaching. The way we've sort of explored our local area and found perhaps places we didn't realize were there. And the sort of granularity of that, the way that we've found and perhaps taken photographs of close-up things in our gardens, as Steve Brace has been doing, as a way of coping with the change. And of course, we're now thinking about our holidays, and we're thinking about what we're going to do in the summer. In the same way, geography as a subject has changed. Some of the topics we taught are unlikely to be taught in the same way when we go back. The inequalities that have opened up as a result of COVID-19, the impacts on development, the supply chains. I mean, the toilet roll to begin with, but now, of course, discussions around Leicester lockdown and garment factories, the issue of globalization, the way that we navigate urban spaces, how cycle lanes have been created. Even going to a supermarket becomes an exercise in geography and negotiating space. And of course, the ideas of public space and how they might change, how restaurants, for example, will have to perhaps be on the pavement or even take over part of the roads. In some cities, that's already happening. And the phrase anthropause has been used, the idea that as a human race, we are pausing, we're pressing the pause button, but we obviously want to go back. And so what I started to do was put those all together into a document. The document's been available on my blog and in various other locations for some time now. It's actually part of the Geography from Home section of the GA website. And that's now grown to around 160 pages. The link is on the slide. You can get the latest copy. And what I've done is basically compiled lots of ideas for how the geographies that we're going to teach will change. So there's work on how we might teach about COVID-19, something I don't intend to do, from Richard Alloway. We've got information and readings from authors. So Rebecca Solnit, for example, who writes a lot about inequality, has talked about how the coronavirus does discriminate because that's what humans do. You know, for a while, people were saying the virus was indiscriminate, when actually it's affecting certain populations and certain places far more than others. So if you're teaching about inequality, this is a real lens to look at that issue through. We've then got material from Gapminder. So Ola Rosling has started to post information about Gapminder's response to COVID. UNOCHA has produced a whole set of icons that can be used for telling stories. So if you're into dual coding, you like your noun project, well, the UNOCHA icons are worth downloading. And also larger groups, the OECD, for example, the CASA people at UCL, they're all starting to look at academically what's going to change as well, how we might rethink schooling. Now, all of that's going to feed into a new GA project. It's called GEO, Geography Education Online. There is a launch event for that next week, actually, on the 15th of July at 4 p.m. on the GA's YouTube channel. And the aim of that project is to provide high quality support for students, live online lessons, fieldwork tutors, academic lectures, and interactive content free of charge. And that's been funded by Innovate UK. So the GA is going to be launching that, and it's going to be ready for the new academic year. And it's worth taking a look at the GA website to see what's included there. So the work that I've been doing is going to feed into that. And of course, one real challenge is what comes next. We've got the idea of climate change as being something which we're going to have to deal with as a global community. And yet COVID-19 seems to have polarized and separated us rather than us working together. So there's lessons here for the next challenge in terms of how we might face that. And of course, one of the topics we teach a lot about, for example, is ocean plastics, and plastic generally has massively increased in its use during the last few months with disposable masks, those endless vinyl stickers 2 meters away. You know, they're all going to become waste in the end. When I go back, I'm going to start by showing a TED talk by a children's author called Oliver Jeffers. And he's written a book about life on planet Earth. It's designed for his young children. It's called An Ode to Living on Earth. It's a TED talk which was published in April of this year. And it beautifully explains how and why we all need to work together for the planet as a whole. So please stay safe, everyone. Have a great summer. Fantastic to see the Sheffield GA branch up and running, but particularly stay safe so that in 2022, you're able to come to Sheffield to see my presidential conference, and I shall be delighted to welcome you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alan, for your time this evening. And even without a presentation, you were able to help us build a rich mental image. And so that brings to the end our presentation. So I'm going to hand over now to Beth Ann, who's going to take us through some of the questions that people have been collecting through this evening. So Beth Ann, over to you and our speakers.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you, Alan. And yeah, thank you so much to all our wonderful speakers this evening. There's been some really thought-provoking talks and some great comments and questions coming through from colleagues across both the G stages on the chat, which has been really, really brilliant. And it's clear to see there's a real appetite for some cross-phase collaboration when it comes to geography and understanding one another's key stages. So please do get in touch with us either on the Twitter or through our email if you've got any ideas how we might do that. So yeah, we've got a few questions which I will jump straight into before we end things this evening. So I'll start with James Hamley, if that's okay. So a couple of questions about this Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 3. How secure are you in the knowledge that prior learning has been explicit in feeder schools? Because people are saying that they find that Key Stage 3 is really mixed. So how secure are you in that? Do you do any pre-assessment, preview quizzes, any baseline assessment to help with that? And how do you plan on making sure that students can actually use the knowledge that they have? Over to you, James.
Hi, thanks, Bethan. So first of all, how secure am I in the knowledge about prior learning in feeder schools? So first of all, obviously the curriculum is a focus in primary schools as well, and there will be a lead teacher for geography there. I would suggest that you have a dialogue with that teacher. I'm lucky enough that in my school we've got a partnership with the local primaries. They're part of our trust. So I've actually been down to the primary schools and spoken to them, and I'm able to see some of their schemes of learning, and so I feel a lot more confident in it. Obviously, it's going to be really impossible to accurately know what each kid knows, and it's going to vary, you know, over time, and they will come to you with plenty of gaps. And I think that links in well to the other question about preview quizzes. I can see the benefit in using a quiz at the start of your year 7 to see what they do and don't know and try and fill those gaps successfully. At the same time, I wouldn't really want to start off my learning in the learning they have with an assessment. I think that I'd rather just get them started on something new. So yeah, difficult one really. I would suggest the best thing to do is have a dialogue with that teacher and support them and make sure that you know what's coming from your feeder schools. Beyond that, there will obviously be gaps, and just have to fill those gaps as you come to it throughout your teaching. If I can move on through to the next question, I hope that's answered them. How do I plan on ensuring students are able to not only recall knowledge from prior learning, but use this through key concepts of deep and geographical understanding? Yeah, great question. I think that an assessment is just the starting point, and it's what you do with that information once you have it. So if we've done an assessment and we know there's gaps in their learning, what we need to do is then deepen that and apply that to their concepts and deepen that understanding. So for example, once they've done that test, you'll obviously find pupil A doesn't know X and pupil B doesn't know Y. So it's just about when they don't know that, you're acting on that in a way that deepens their knowledge and applies it to those concepts. So it's not almost more important than the assessment itself is what you do with that data. I hope that answers those questions.
Brilliant, thank you, James. Yeah, wonderful. And we've got a couple of questions for David Goodwin about the literacy that you were talking about at the beginning. A question about how often you would use this type of lesson and the impact of using one that often, the workload costs as well, I guess. If you've got any thoughts on that.
So could you just repeat the first part again, Beth? I didn't quite catch it. You there, Bethan?
No, we can't hear you, I'm afraid.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, wonderful.
Could you just repeat the first part of the question? I didn't quite catch it.
How often you use the type of lesson that you shared with us in your presentation, and the impact of using them regularly, or how often you use them? Yeah, so
the lesson I shared is one of many that forms a booklet, and the booklet is looking at India and it's supporting the economic change unit of work in the AQA GCSE specification. But what we're trying to do with it is be quite ambitious and really teach beyond the spec. So the sequence of lessons that I showcased there was about the monsoon, and ultimately the end of that sequence of lessons, the aim is for pupils to be able to explain the importance of the monsoon to the economy of India, to the people of India. But what we wanted to use was the opportunity to build in synoptic links, so why the monsoon happens. So we begin by looking at why we have seasons, axial tilt and the tilt of the earth, and then we can start to build in our knowledge from global atmospheric circulation, when we can re-explore why rain forms, and then also we can look at relief rain as well along the Western Ghats of India. So it's quite ambitious topic of work. I don't really subscribe to the idea of having lessons. I don't think in the idea of lessons. I think learning. So that's portion of work that I showed you there. That could take one lesson. It could take 2 lessons, and that's not a problem. That the aim is for them to have that deep and secure knowledge before we move on. And we do that by checking what they already know, and connecting it to what they already know, and going back to the start, where we told the story of India. We build in the fact that India wasn't always where it is, so we look at continental drift, and how India came to be where it is, and then we also look at the formation of the Himalayas, but then how the Himalayas is the source of the 3 main rivers that run in northern India, and then obviously from there we can start to think about why rivers are important and how they provide sources of water for all of northern India. So hopefully that helps.
Oh yeah, brilliant. Thank you, David. Lots to think about in terms of how we can deepen students' knowledge. So brilliant, thank you. A couple of questions for Ellie about the practicalities of some of the GIS tools that you mentioned. Some people mentioned in the chat how Digimaps for Schools is obviously freely available until the end of the summer, which I definitely have the benefits of. So there's that one, but are the GIS tools that you mentioned, Ellie, are they free, and are there any how-to guides?
Hiya, yeah, so ArcGIS Online is completely free. Can you see me, by the way? Sorry. ArcGIS Online is completely free. You should probably contact Jason Swale, who is on my slide, which I have now tweeted. So I'm at @aquath_geo if you haven't found me. So Jason Swale is in charge of the education arm of ArcGIS in the UK. He will help you set up your school account, and then you have something like 2,000 users that you can have using it at any given time, and it's all completely free for schools, along with using Survey 123. And there's a number of other really interesting apps out there that you can use. There's one about Community Builder, I think it's called, and you can use data to sort of build infographics basically on specific communities, which is really good when you're comparing communities. So say for example, bits of changing places, you can do that with. And I've completely forgotten the other question. I'm really sorry.
It's about how-to guides.
Yeah, so again, I've tweeted underneath the final slide a link to the Esri teacher resources. There's a lot of how-to guides on there, which really helped me, especially when I was getting going with this. And sometimes when I've forgotten how to do something, I go back to. It's something that you definitely have to keep practicing with. You can forget how to do things, but generally it comes back once you've had a quick read. So yeah, there's loads and loads of how-to guides on there. But yeah, during that sort of Twitter storm that kind of occurred after my presentation, I think I might have agreed to do some how-tos, which is terrifying, but I'll have a go for you, and hopefully they'll be helpful.
Brilliant, thank you so much, Ellie. It's great to hear of all these amazing software that's out there that's totally free. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you to all of you who've mentioned them this evening. A couple of questions for Megan. First of all, how can we use visualizers in a COVID safe way? So when you're talking about using students' work, etc. And another question just about
the practicalities. So are there any recommended brands for visualizers to make sure that we get the high quality work that we want?
So I have had experience using the Huey brand. I can't remember the exact model number. It's not the cheapest one, it's the next one up from that. And there are masses of different ones out there, ranging from, I think the one that my department's bought me is about 50, 60 quid. You can go all the way up to hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So you need to do your research and also think about what you're going to use it for. For me, that visualizer, I can get an A4 lined book under it. I can get my A5 ones, so I can get exercise books underneath. I can also put an OS map underneath. You're not going to get the huge ones underneath it, but often I'll zoom in. I'm just trying to, let me see if I've got it here. So it's really, really portable to carry around as well. So this is the one that I have and I've used it at home. There is a base that attaches to it as well, and it does literally crunch right up like that, and you can stuff it into your bag. They're pretty durable. So again, do your research, but the Huey one is great. In terms of using them in a COVID safe way, I think they're going to be a fantastic tool for September when we have to teach from the front of the classroom. Like I said earlier, we've really lost that ability to be able to float around the room and interact with kids. I found that really strange going in with key worker kids when we had to stay the full 2 meters away from them. So I just have it on my desk all day. The software has been installed across the school, but you can also just use it with Microsoft the camera function, depending on obviously whether you're on Mac or Windows, whatever. So yeah, I think it's a great tool for social distancing. And it will help you bridge that gap where you can't actually go up and talk to the kids. If they ask a question, you can quickly chuck a piece of paper underneath and go through things as well. I think that answers the question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Megan. Yeah, great to think about how we can use Visualizer as an extended pair of eyes almost. Brilliant, thank you. And then the last question before we pass over to Tom to close things for the evening is for Amy. Sarah on Twitter was agreeing that the students often know the word, but then the challenge is helping them to then use that word in describing, explaining, and using the word. Do you have any suggestions?
Hiya, thanks, Bethan. Yeah, I saw this tweet actually, and it's unfortunate in 5 minutes you've got to try and condense a lot of ideas. So apologies if we get around to that in the talk. One idea is quite simple, really, but to get a list of words, a list of geographical vocabulary that you want each of your students to use, put it into target grades. So if you've got target grades, say 1 to 4, and then 5 to 6, and then 7 plus. And the aim is for students in their spoken activity or their written activity to use those words, and then it ensures that they are using vocabulary appropriate to their level, they're getting challenged. And I mean, I've got lots of other ideas that I used as part of the intervention process for my MA research, so I can share some of those on Twitter after.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for that. And so it's over to me now to just bring this evening to a close. So I just want to say once again, a massive, massive thank you to all of our speakers. There is no way that this evening would have been anywhere near as successful as it has been without our incredible speakers. We're going to make our YouTube video available for people to come back and watch again. I mean, I need to go back and watch it again. There's so much wonderful stuff. But thank you so much to every person who has stuck with us this far. And we really, really hope you can get in contact with us on Twitter, drop us an email. We would love to work more closely with all of you. Thank you so, so much to everybody for tonight. And we're going to end our event there. So thank you again. If I could end the event, obviously. So I'll now end.